The mockery begins. The Zorak Empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Their warships were massive, their technology unmatched, at least. That's what they believed. To them, humans were nothing more than a minor species, a joke in the grand scheme of the galaxy. On the bridge of the Zorak command ship, High Admiral Kiss stood tall, his golden armor shining. Under the dim red lights, a holographic display in front of him showed the HSA Vindicator, a single Earth warship floating near the edge of Zorak territory. Kiss let out a loud guttural laugh. This is what the humans send a single outdated warship do. They truly believe they can stand against us. The officers around him laughed as well. They had crushed fleets much larger than this before one human ship. It was an insult to their power. "Admiral, shall we destroy it now?" one of the commanders asked, smirking. Kiss grinned. "Not yet, let them tremble first." Across the vast emptiness of space, inside the HSS Vindicator, Captain Elias Graves sat in his command chair watching the Zorak fleet from his own holographic display. He could hear the alien broadcasts. They were mocking his ship, calling it outdated, weak, useless. He smiled. "They had no idea, Commander." Reynolds Elias said, turning to his weapons officer. "How long until they fire on us?" Reynolds checked the enemy formation. "Not long, they're getting into position." "Good," Elias said. "Let them take the first shot." The Zorak fleet moved into attack formation. Their battleships, sleek and black, surrounded the lone human vessel. They didn't see it as a threat to them. It was just target charge. "Plasma cannons," one of the Zorak officers announced. The alien ships locked onto the HSS Vindicator, their weapons glowing a bright, deadly blue. Krallis leaned forward, watching with amusement. Fire. A wave of plasma blasts shot through space, heading straight for the human warship. It was over, or at least that's what the Zorak thought. Suddenly, the HSS Vindicator vanished. Crow frowned. The officers stopped laughing. Where did it go? The sensors on every Zorak ship went dark. The human vessel was no longer on their radars. It was as if it had disappeared into thin air. "Impossible!" an officer shouted. That ship was right there. Cuss slammed his fist on the control panel. "Find them now." Across the battlefield, the HSS Vindicator silently reappeared behind the Zor flagship. Its dark metallic hull gleamed under the distant starlight. The ship was not outdated, it was not weak, it was a ghost. A predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Inside the Vindicator, Captain Elias watched the enemy panic. He leaned forward and whispered into his cons. "Now, let's show them what real fear looks like." The Vindicator's engines roared. It charged forward, and the hunt began. The predator strikes. The silence in the Zorak flagship was suffocating. Moments ago, their fleet had been laughing at the lone human warship. Now their sensors were blind, and that same weak vessel had vanished into the void. Admiral Sis claws tapped against the metal console, his golden eyes scanning the darkness of space. "Where are they?" he growled. His officers scrambled, their long fingers dancing over glowing control panels. No readings, no movement. It was as if the human ship had never existed. Then boom, a shock wave ripped through the Zorak formation. Cuss turned just in time to see one of his cruisers engulfed in flames, its armored hull collapsing inward like paper. No weapon fire had been detected. No alarms had gone off. It had simply exploded. "What way is day 8? Kellis roared. "Admiral!" a panicked officer shrieked. "The human ship, it's in. See our formation." Crows blood ran cold. "Impossible. They had no way in." But the evidence was right before his eyes. The HSS Vindicator was now right in the middle of the Zorak fleet, weaving through the chaos like a phantom. "Fire on them!" Kellis ordered. Zorak battleships opened fire. Plasma cannons ignited the void with deadly energy. The bright blue streaks shot towards the human warship, only to hit nothing. The HSS Vindicator was gone again. Another explosion rocked the fleet. Another cruiser shattered into debris. Inside the Vindicator, Captain Elias Graves sat calmly in his command chair, watching his enemy descend into panic. "Stealth systems holding?" he asked. "Perfectly, Commander." Reynolds confirmed. Elias smirked. "Their arrogance blinded them. They thought we'd come with broad force. They never considered we'd come with precision." The HSS Vindicator wasn't just a warship, it was a ghost, a prototype vessel unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It didn't rely on sheer firepower, it used unpredictability, misdirection, and terror. It moved without detection, attacked without warning, and disappeared before the enemy could react. And now the mighty Zorik Empire was learning the truth. They weren't the hunters, they were the prey. Keese bared his fangs, furious. We need to see them activate all long-range scanners. Already trying, Admiral, but boom. Another ship exploded, then another one. By one, the fleet was being torn apart. And they still hadn't fired a single shot at the enemy. Kiz grabbed a trembling officer by the collar. What is happening? How are they doing this? The officer gulped. They're hunting us. Sir Callus's heart pounded. Humans hunting Zorik warriors? It was unthinkable, and yet the proof surrounded them. Suddenly, the holographic screen flickered to life. A transmission. Captain Elias Graves appeared, cool, composed, with the faintest hint of amusement in his steel-gray eyes. He stared straight at Krallis, then leaned forward and spoke. You should have killed us when you had the chance. The screen cut to black. Then the Vindicator opened fire. The real slaughter had begun. The slaughter begins. Panic gripped the Zorik fleet like ice. Just minutes ago they had been laughing, mocking humanity's supposed weakness. Now their ships were exploding in the void, annihilated by an enemy they couldn't even see. Admiral Kiss clenched his claws around the control panel. All ships defensive formation now. His fleet scrambled to obey, but there was no formation that could stop a ghost on board. This is Vindicator. Captain Elias Graves watched the Zorik struggle. His hands rested calmly on his armrests, his sharp eyes scanning the enemy ships. They're scared now, Commander Reynolds noted, his voice cool and calculating. Elias nodded. Good, but scared enemies are still dangerous. Let's finish this before they can adapt. He turned to his weapons. Officer, deploy the fangs. A silent command beneath the Vindicator's hull. Dark panels slid open, revealing a swarm of sleek jet-black drones, each no bigger than a human fist, armed with plasma cutters and EMP spikes. They launch without a single sound. Kiss didn't even see them coming. The first warning was the sudden, eerie flickering of lights inside his ship. The second was the horrified screams from the lower decks. Admiral, we're losing power. And crack, the transmission cut off. Something was inside his ship. Wake A8. No, Chris bellowed, his patient snapping. Unknown devices are breaching our systems. An officer shouted. They're inside our engines, our weapons, our life support. The Vindicator's drones were tearing them apart, cutting power cables, frying circuits, ripping apart the ship from the inside, and the Zorik were completely powerless to stop them. Callus's breathing grew ragged. His mighty fleet, a force that had crushed entire civilizations, was dying ship by ship, crew by crew, and the humans, they hadn't even taken a single hit. Inside the Vindicator, Captain Elias watched his enemy's fleet break down like rotting wood, collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. This is what happens when you underestimate us, he muttered. Reynolds turned to him. Do we finish them all? Elias falked for a moment. The logical part of him wanted to wipe them out completely, send a message to the entire galaxy, but another part of him, the one that still believed in control over chaos, wanted something more. He smirked. No, we leave one alive. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Which one? Elias pointed at Callus's flagship. We leave him with just enough to crawl back home so he can tell the galaxy what happens when you mock humanity. Reynolds grinned. Brutal. Elias leaned forward. Fire at will. The Vindicator's weapons came to life. A storm of plasma beams ripped through the void, tearing apart battleships, incinerating cruisers, leaving nothing but twisted metal and floating wreckage. Ship after ship erupted in flames, and in just minutes, the mighty Zorik fleet was reduced to one fly ship drifted in the void, barely functional, the last survivor of what was supposed to be an easy victory. Silence filled the bridge as officers were dead. His fleet was gone. And then the transmission flickered on again. Captain Elias Graves stared at him through the screen, calm, unshaken and smiling. Tell your people, Elias said, his voice like cold steel. The next time they laugh at humanity will be the last. The screen cut off, and with that the HSS Vindicator vanished once more, leaving Kiss floating in the wreckage of his own failure, the Emperor's rage. Admiral Kiss drifted in the wreckage of his once mighty fleet, alone defeated. He had commanded over 100 warships now. Only his broken flagship remained barely functional. Humanity had humiliated him. His claws trembled as he activated the distress beacon. The Empire would not take this lightly. Zorik Prime. Imperial War Chamber, the Grand Throne. Room of Emperor Zolzer was silent, a rare and dangerous silence. The towering Emperor, draped in obsidian robes, sat rigid upon his throne of dark metal. His 6 crimson eyes glowed with barely contained fury. His most powerful fleet gone, his enemies untouched before him. Kiss knelt broken. Asham. You are alive, the Emperor said, his voice like a blade against steel. Explain. Kiss gulped. We underestimated them. A deadly hush fell over the chamber. Underestimated, the Emperor whispered. His voice alone sent a shiver through the gathered warlords. Chris's breathing was ragged. It was not a war, my Emperor. It was an execution. Their ship was invisible. Their weapons were precise. Their technology was beyond anything we expected. Zalor's claws scraped against his throne. The idea was unthinkable. Humans outmatching the great Zorik Empire, impossible. And yet Kuss was not a fool. Show me. Kuss activated his ships. Damage recording. The Imperial War Chamber watched in silence as the battle played out. The humans never missed a shot. Their ship moved like a phantom, striking and vanishing before the Zorik even had time to react. Then came the drones, small, silent, unstoppable. The chamber watched as their warships fell, one by one, without a single counterattack. When the recording ended, the warlords did not laugh. For the first time in history they looked afraid. But he smiled, a deep, slow, dangerous smile. Good. He leaned forward, his glowing eyes locking onto Kuss. Now we know what we are dealing with. Kuss hesitated. My Emperor, they could destroy us all. Zerk grin widened. Let them try. He turned to his warlords, summoned the execution fleet. The room fell into stunned silence. The execution fleet, a force so powerful it had only been deployed twice in history. Entire civilizations have been erased. Under its wrath, one of the warlords cleared his throat. Emperor, if they could destroy Callus's fleet, then Zerk voice cut through him like a blade. We are not Kuss. He stood towering over them all. Humanity thinks they have won. His 6 crimson eyes gleamed with hunger. They have only started a war. They cannot survive Earth. Deep Space Command, and in the cold darkness of a classified military station orbiting Earth, Captain Elias Graves stood before a holographic display. Red warning lights blinked across the screen. Dozens of Zorik warships were mobilizing. Looks like we made an impression, Commander Reynolds muttered. Elias exhaled slowly. The execution fleet, it was coming, and this time the war wouldn't be over in minutes. Send a message to the fleet command, Elias said, his voice calm but firm. Tell them to prepare the Hellfire Protocol. Reynolds' eyes widened. You think it's time for that? Elias turned, staring into the void of space. If they want a war, we'll give them one. The Hellfire Protocol. The execution fleet had launched across the vast expanse of space. 100 warships, each the size of a small moon, moved in perfect form. Their mission: eradicate humanity. At the heart of the fleet, Emperor Xalar himself watched from his command ship, the Obliterator. Today, he declared, his voice echoing across the warships, we end this pathetic species. His warlords roared in approval. There would be no mercy. Earth's last stand, deep inside Earth's hidden military complex, buried miles beneath the surface. Captain Elias Graves stood before a massive holographic display. Red warnings flashed everywhere. The execution fleet was coming. Commander Reynolds swallowed hard. We don't have enough firepower to fight them head-on. Elias nodded. That's why we won't. A silent tension filled the room. Then Elias pressed a single button. The screen changed. Blueprints of something classified, something never used before. The Hellfire Protocol. All the weapons so secret that even most of Earth's high command didn't know it existed. Reynolds' Eyes widened. You're serious? We haven't even tested it. We don't have a choice. Elias turned to his officers. Initiate the Hellfire Protocol. Bring out the Omega Fleet. The entire command center went silent. Then sirens blared, red lights flashed, and in deep space, hidden in the void where no alien had ever dared look, the Omega Fleet woke up. The Omega Fleet awakens near Jupiter's shadow, the blackest void in the system. Massive warships blinked into existence. They had been invisible, hidden from sensors, from light itself until now. These were not ordinary human ships. They were aid-driven war machines, silent, unstoppable. Each ship fought for itself, reacting faster than any alien mind could comprehend, and the centerpiece, the Hellfire Dreadnought, a warship so advanced that it had been deemed too powerful for conventional war, and now it was going to be unleashed. The battle begins. The execution fleet entered the Sol system. Emperor Zaylor sneered. They aren't even resisting. But then something changed, a ripple in space, and then the omen of a fleet to be cloaked. The first shot came from the Hellfire Dreadnought. Not a missile, not a laser, a star killer beam. A single red line of light cut through the void, and 5 execution warships, each the size of a city, were instantly erased. Zur stood frozen. Impossible. The Oma fleet moved like ghosts. Their weapons tore through shields as if they didn't exist. The execution fleet, the most feared force in the galaxy, was losing. The Emperor's realization on the obliterator alarm screamed. Zur warlords shouted in panic. But the Emperor, he said nothing. He simply watched, and for the first time in his life he felt fear, because this wasn't just technology. This was something else, something worse, something humanity had been hiding all along. Zolzer clenched his fists. What are you? Humans? The Emperor's desperation. The battlefield was a graveyard of wreckage. The execution fleet, once unstoppable, was being annihilated. The Hellfire Dreadnought moved like a predator, cutting through enemy warships with terrifying precision. And for the first time in history, an Imperial Emperor was afraid. The final gamut, Emperor Exil. Zur clenched his fists. His once mighty fleet was reduced to fire and debris. He turned to his warlords. We must strike their homeworld now. But my lord, Zelzer grabbed the officer by the throat and crushed his windpipe. No more excuses. He activated his command console, a last resort, a forbidden weapon, a doomsday device that even his ancestors feared. The Star Crusher bomb, a weapon that didn't just destroy planets, it turned entire solar systems into black holes. Zerk's eyes burned with hatred. If we cannot rule humanity, we will erase them. And with it he gave the order. The Star Crusher was launched toward Earth, Earth's last hope. Deep inside Earth's military command alarm screamed. A red alert flashed. Ace Aorsus, HE or DTC ed impact in 30 menus. The room fell into chaos. Commander Reynolds paled. If that bomb detonates, Earth is finished. Elias Graves stood frozen for a moment. Then he whispered, not if I can stop it. The one-way mission. Elias turned toward his ship, the Valkyrie. It wasn't the biggest. It wasn't the strongest, but it was the fastest. He tapped his comms. Patch me through to all forces. A hologram of Elias appeared across every human ship. This is Captain Elias Graves. His voice was calm, steady. You all know what's coming. That bomb is heading straight for Earth. Silence. We have no time. I'm taking the Valkyrie to intercept it. A murmur ran through the fleet. You all have your orders. Defend the Oma fleet. Hold the line. Commander Reynolds' voice cracked. Elias, if you go out there, you won't come back. Elias smiled. I know. And then, without waiting for a response, the Valkyrie shot forward, straight toward the Star Crusher. The final race. The Star Crusher bomb moved fast, but the Valkyrie was faster. Inside his cockpit, Elias's hands blurred over the controls. There was no room for error. The ship shuddered as it pushed past its safety limits. Engines at 150%, structural integrity at 40%. Warning ship being apart. Elias ignored it. All closer. Closer. The bomb was right there. And then he fired the Valkyrie's full payload. Missiles, rail guns, plasma cannons. Everything slammed into the Star Crusher. The bomb began to crack, But it wasn't enough. It was still going. Elias had only one auction left. He took a deep breath and whispered for Earth. Then he punched. The engines one last time. The Valkyrie collided with the Star Crusher at full speed, and in a blinding explosion both were gone. The aftermath silence filled the battlefield. Then cheers erupted across Earth's fleet. The bomb is gone. He did it. But in the Emperor's command ship there was no celebration. Salzar's claws dug into his throne. Humanity should have been weak. They should have been broken. Instead they had done what no empire had ever done. They had won. But the Emperor's eyes burned with fury. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I will return the Emperor's fall." The war was supposed to be over. The Star Crusher bomb was gone. Humanity had survived. But the Emperor was still out there, and he wasn't done. A final threat. Deep inside his war chamber, Emperor Zayler stared at the broken remnants of his fleet. His execution armada was gone. His doomsday weapon was destroyed. And yet his rage burned hotter than ever. He turned to his last surviving warlord. "Summon the Oblivion Legion." The warlord hesitated. "But my lord, the Oblivion Legion was never meant to be unleashed." They, hairs or claws slashed across the warlord's throat. "I was not asking." The dying alien collapsed to the floor, choking on his own blood. The Emperor's voice echoed through the dark halls of his throne world. "Send the signal in the farthest reaches of the galaxy." Something stirred the return to Earth. Humanity mourned. Statues of Captain Elias graves were raised across the planet. He was the hero who had saved them all. But in the shadows of victory, a warning came. Emergency transmission. TC Commander Reynolds' eyes widened. A message from deep space. It played on the holographic screen. A single phrase, spoken in Salzar's voice: "You think you have won." The image shifted. A massive armada larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dark, twisted ships that devoured the stars themselves. Then the final words came: "Oblivion comes for you." A desperate plan. Panic spread through the fleet. Humanity had barely survived the last war. Now an even deadlier force was coming. Reynolds turned to Admiral Carter. "We need a new weapon, something that can end this war permanently." Carter exhaled. "There's only one option left." They pulled up classified blueprints. A prototype warship, one that was never supposed to exist, a ship that shouldn't even be possible. Its name, the Revenant. The Revenant rises. The Revenant wasn't just a ship. It was